Well, welcome to tonight's webinar. I literally just got back from Albany, 5 hour drive. Got back in the nick of time. Got caught behind roadworks and was swearing and road rage in full force because I was looking to get back on time, but I managed to get back on time. So there you go. But yes, boys always like being with me. I reckon my road rage is fun to watch. So anyway, welcome to our residual income series, part of the Plan B. And yeah, looking forward to sharing a little bit more on this very important topic tonight. And I would say without any hesitation that when I talk to people in surveys or studies as to what their biggest thing that keeps people awake at night and worried about what's going on in the world, you have these what I call masking emotions or masking needs. And, you know, they're scared about losing their wealth and, you know, scared about this and that. And but ultimately, the not having enough to basically live, the basic need for survival, like fight, flight, is a big core need. I mean, people are giving in to getting jabbed and doing all kinds of stuff because ultimately people's biggest fears, no matter how much money they have, but they're going to lose their income and they're going to eventually run out and have enough and not have enough. And not having the income sources that make them feel confident to stand up and refuse to be coerced. Who can relate to that today? Who knows that you're vulnerable to coercion at this time in your life just because you don't have the residual income streams or multiple streams to keep you feeling basically secure? My guess is quite a number of you. Yep. So it seems to be a few, which is good. So yeah, so a few of you being honest. And yeah, it's always good to know that, and be honest with yourself. My experience is that most people just aren't honest with themselves. And I remember once a guy saying to me when I was going through a tough time in my life, and honestly, I was bullshitting myself and everyone around me. And he just, men need other men to kick their ass when they kind of get, lame in their living. And this guy just says to me, he basically, as I call people, he said, "Warren, you're an absolute idiot." He said, "I don't care if you lie to me. I don't care if you lie to everyone around you, but don't lie to yourself because that's what you're doing right now." And that kind of shook me out of my stupor. And I think many people live in this lie as to what's really going on in them. And fear can be a good driving thing if you can recognize it and channel that energy into something powerful. That's one of my starting things I'll say today. And there's a lot to do with Plan B, which means having those backup plans in the event that things really don't go the way you plan. And my experience is most people don't really have one. Most people live in hope rather than in planning. And most people are running around frantically in fight, flight, and survival mode and running around what I call trying to use buckets to get water out of a boat with leaks rather than having plugged up the leaks before the boat got too far into the water. And the smart people are doing that. They're plugging their leaks. I do honestly believe we've still got a lot of time, more than people think. But in saying that, time goes really, really fast, like really fast, as many of you know. And just like that, before you know it, I don't think any of you would have imagined, you would have all thought that this time last year, you had plenty of time to work yourself out around the jab coercion. And now it's just now the time's run out and it's only 12 months. And I'm sure you'd all agree we've come a long way in 12 months in terms of what's going on. So really take today. Today, I'm just going to be doing a bit more of a free, like I said, a free gift webinar to really give you a bit of an overview about residual income, the way to, and just some of my thoughts and things like that can really help you and give you some guidance to get started. I mean, obviously in one 40 to 45 minute webinar, I can't really solve all the problems and give you amazing things, but I can certainly get you thinking in the right way. And that's the main thing today, objective of today. And obviously, I'm not giving any kind of financial advice. I certainly don't want to. I'm not licensed because I really don't want to. I mean, if I give you advice and then you lose your money, I feel pretty bad. So I just don't do that. So really just simply the old economy. And this is, again, what people fail to adapt. The Industrial Revolution, when so many people failed to adapt, when the Industrial Revolution happened in the 1700s, people were like screaming about automation, like it's costing people jobs. And meanwhile, the wheel of automation rolled on and eventually we have what we have now. And it's almost laughable to look back And when we think about the fact that it was a time when we just didn't do any automation and people were fighting about it. Then, of course, we had various other, but another big jump was what happened around 30 years ago when we started moving towards the internet information age. And now at the moment, we're moving right into what I call the digital economy, and what I call putting the world on the touch of a screen. The fact that we can sit here and actually look at the computers and be able to do digital transactions and transfer money to people from a distance, sitting here right now. Be able to, get on a webinar, be able to talk to people worldwide, be able to do all kinds of things you couldn't do, and everything moving more and more electronic. And no doubt people will scream, people will cry, they will fight, they will say, we don't want this, but that's basically where we're going. And in 100 or 50 years from now, people will look back and kind of laugh as to how people were still trying to hold on to the old way of being. So really, the people who are going to prosper and find good residual incomes and do really well are people who are solving problems in the new economy and adapting to it. It's actually that simple. People who are going to struggle at this time, I just got kicked out of being host and I was removed. So my screen sharing, hang on. Here we go again. So, So the old economy, people who are holding on to the old economy and trying to fit. I can tell you now that the biggest thing that changed me in this area that will hopefully help a number of you is to actually realize there was a time 10 years ago from this time, the very thought of going online and digital scared the absolute bejesus out of me. I was a physical kind of guy. I was used to physical stuff. I'd grown up in that way. I'd grown up playing sport a lot, and I was used to flying around the world doing events. And I started to notice the change. I noticed that we were getting large people to events in 2009, 2010, 2008. I noticed by 2012 that was no longer the case. And by 2013, numbers were getting very sparse. So I realized I had to make some major transitions because I realized that. And I knew I was vulnerable, very, very vulnerable, because I knew that if my contracts got cut, if live events dried off, I had a real problem. And so I started taking steps well before and doing the hard things while it was still very doable. And I can remember when I got my new webinars up and running, I think that very week when it started to take off, a major contract of mine got cancelled, which pretty much wiped out my live events business, flying around, almost wiped it out. If I hadn't been planning for 2 years ahead, I literally would have had the biggest problem on planet Earth. And so the main thing to understand for residual income is to understand that if you can make the adaptation from the old economy into the new, there's an abundance of streams of income waiting for you to create, because literally you're living in a world now where there's so many opportunities online, and the only issue that you've got is working out the good and the bad. And I won't deny, we've had opportunities we've done very, very well in, and we've got into stuff where we've lost money. We've done all our due diligence. At the end of the day, we've lost money. And, we thought we had the residual income stream, and then we realized that we didn't have one because it turned out to be a scam. That's the reality, that's the reality of what we're dealing with. And yeah, I agree, Nadine, it's a great reference pick. So it's really being able to make that adaptation and understand the new world while still not completely dismissing the old world, because at the end of the day, people still live in physical houses. I mean, we're not living in the cloud. We still eat physical food. We still drive physical cars. We still do all that stuff. So I'm not saying to dismiss the physical stuff. That's still ultimately having some kind of physical hands-on business in some form, as well as digital, is actually a good, what I call protection, or a very good kind of diversification. Because at the end of the day, the new economy, the digital thing could shut down. It could be solar flares. It could shut down for weeks. So it's always good to have every base covered. And that's why we teach that overall. But it's critical to adapt and start to move into the new economy. And if you're going to do that, which is understanding the digital move, things like that, and understanding especially things like the cryptocurrency world, understanding the real basics of what Robert Kiyosaki taught Rich Dad, Poor Dad, of actually being an owner of businesses, not just an investor. And many people do find that really hard because, and I was explaining this to someone the other day, And I'm sure many of you could relate to this. And you see that many people thinking they're doing the right thing tell their kids, hey, you've got to go to school, and yet you've got to behave, you've got to get good marks in school. I'm proud of you. You got A's in your report, and oh, you've done well in this kind of stuff. And oh, you just got to do what your teacher tells you, and just do this. And oh, look, just get to university, get a good degree behind you, and then you can make a really good income. And and then whenever you get in trouble in school, they're on your case, or when you upset people in the community sport, or you're at a family gathering and you say something inappropriate, which upsets the host. It's like, you should have been more sensitive to their feelings. And then they wonder why their kids turn up and suddenly walk up, give up their freedoms, get coerced into a jab, or end up getting a job they hate, end up being in a relationship they don't want to be in, and all that kind of stuff. So to move into a new economy and the streams of residual income, for the majority of people, you have to do a fundamental shift in the way you're approaching things and the way you're doing things. And one thing I will say, that everyone I know who's got good residual streams of income, they've got that balance between, where they're taking their cautions and their whys, but they're also understanding there's always risk in anything they're doing. And we're not afraid to try new things, get to understand things, start things small, and see what happens and see what things work out and stuff like that. So I never invest or create income streams in anything that I haven't calculated precisely my risk, my monetary possible loss and the possible return, and seeing if the whole thing weighs up and ultimately ends up in front. And as long as the risk and return is there, I do that. So that's why if you're going to go into streams of income, you've got to understand the new economy, and you've got to start to get some understanding of mathematics as well. So cash flow versus assets, the critical distinction. One of the things to realize with assets, for example, is that there are people who can very easily generate income. I, for example, find income easy to generate. And that's just because income is very much an energy kind of thing. It's something where you got things coming in for assets, for money you've invested. It's stuff basically from working or providing a service which you get rewarded for. Assets, of course, are like property, gold, silver, a long-term crypto, a really good, valuable car, stuff that you're physically holding onto but shows your net worth, whereas cash flow is less about net worth. And it's important to understand the difference and even the different mentality. My experience is that people I know people who are very good at generating assets, but not so good at developing cash flow, and the other way around. And the mindset, for example, or the way to be good at cash flow is very much about energy. It's very much about investing your assets in something that will bring income in, providing a service and a business. And I always tell people that you'll always get better cash flow if you're doing the two together. You're doing business, you're serving in some way other people, and at the same time, you're taking your money and you're investing it into stuff that's going to be producing income, and as well as putting things into stuff that produce assets. And being able to understand that by having assets, for example, there's a good legacy or reason for doing it, so to speak. And for me, I never had as much interest in assets as I did cash flow until I understood the importance of legacy and things like that. But developing cash flow is very different. I meet clients, for example, who've got good cash flow, very little assets, and they're actually quite relaxed because ultimately they know they can live day by day. I meet clients who, for example, got $2 or $3 million in assets, their cash flow is quite low and they're shitting themselves. Now, in theory, it's crazy because you can say, well, if you've got $2 or $3 million worth of assets, you can very easily, sell them off or things like that, and then you can live for the next 20 years. In theory, that sounds great. But people with assets would know what I mean. The fear is, well, that's all well and good, but the government could take it. Or, well, I want to keep my assets. I want to have that cushion. Or, I don't like seeing my money dwindling. And deep down, that fear, as you see your assets drop. So I meet people even with $3 million of assets but a cash flow problem, and they're really quite freaking out, or they're at least been much more tense and stressed than someone who's got plenty of cash flow but minimal assets. Who can relate to that, by the way? Who can really relate? Like, you've got assets, but at the end of the day, your income is the problem for you. And you know that if your income dries up, you are going to be nervous. Yeah, most of you. It's actually a human nature thing. And it's good to know this because this way you start to actually become more motivated and to actually generate income. So having a good sources of income coming in is the best defense against coercive mandates. If you know that, for example, that you have good residual income streams, or if you know that that you could go and develop it very easily and it doesn't particularly bother you, you're not going to be frightened. If someone coerces you, you're not going to really be all that stressed about the whole thing. You're going to go, okay. A very good example was in Don Miguel Ruiz's book about the 4 agreements, a esoteric book. An example he gives is a situation like, let's say you're living at home, and let's say that you're abundantly fed. You got lots of good food, you eat really, really well, and you got an endless supply of food in your house. And you go knock on the door, and then you answer it, and member of the opposite sex says, look, I'm coming here to offer to give you, free food for a year with just one condition. You got to let me move into your house. You got to pretty much do whatever I tell you to do. If I nag you, boss you around, and have sex with me whenever you want to. If you've got an abundance of stuff, you're going to laugh at them and tell them to get absolutely lost. By contrast, let's say that you really are struggling. You have had financial issues for a while, your food is dried up, you just are starving for food, and someone makes you that offer. He says there's a good chance you're going to say yes. And that's why many people get into toxic relationships, for example, or domestic violence, and stay there, because the real issue is they're craving love, and they're terrified of the withdrawal of the nourishment of the emotional connection and the love. And many of you, especially who are women, can understand what I mean. You probably stayed in situations that you think, why'd I stay in that? But it's because you are craving that love and terrified about losing the loss of love. And even men in the same situation. So whereas when you have a good sense of love, it's less of a difficulty for you to move on. And that was one reason, for example, I was able to relatively easily, compared to most, move on from, losing Sammy, my partner, because overall, my life is supplied with an abundance of love and people I'm very close to that were able to, surround me, fill my heart with love and help me to do that. And that's kind of how you want to start to see your income streams as well, and start to build an abundance of them and constantly be thinking of ways you can give back and things like that. So yeah, Esther, poor self-esteem sets you up to stay in disempowering situations. I learned a very good song when I was in the common law movement that says, a child who knows their common law rights shall do well in life. A child who knows their common law rights shall do well in life. A child who doesn't know their common law rights, they are vulnerable to addiction, coercion, divorce, suicide. And there's a lot of truth to that, and I'm sure you would all agree. And now for some of you, you've heard me sing for the first time, so there you go. So I'm going to share a couple of things today. The 4 W's, which is very important about generating residual income, that will speed up your process about getting residual income. So that's one of the things we're going to start today. Darren, hidden talent. Yeah, look, I actually used to be a musician and singer, Darren. In fact, in my 20s, I was going to be pretty much full-time in that. I used to run major bands, write my own music and distribute it. And then I stopped doing it for a while. And my plan is once I've got a couple of things finished, I'm going to get back and start releasing my music. So there you go. That's a hidden thing. More of them meets the eye, exactly. I like to a magician doesn't reveal all of his cards. So this is going back to what's called the wealth dynamics profiling, but why do you want residual income? Now, my experience is that most people, the reason they're not getting residual income flowing in is they don't actually have this clear. If deep down you think you're perfectly fine and you got enough and got no real reason to do that, something in you're going to switch off. So why do you want to have that? Now, in this current environment, really relating to the fact that the residual income and not having it is what makes you vulnerable to coercion, to government mandates, can be a big driving why. And a number of our clients and staff we work with have said that. That's what's got them going, got them creating residual incomes. So that can be a good reason, but really get clear on your why. I mean, that's my why. I don't like giving up my power. I have this rule, but I will burn my life to the ground and walk away with nothing rather than be coerced to something that I don't do. But in saying that, I don't really want to burn myself down and go down to the ground with nothing. So that's what drives me to consistently create residual incomes. It's just the fact that it's the absolute there's no way on heck I'm going to have someone coercing me into doing shit that I don't want to do and using money on me. whether it's a girl, whether it's a government, whether it's anyone. The other one too, and that's what I call the loss aspect of it. And in psychology, there's three things that drive people. There's gain. There's the biggest one that drives people is fear of loss, or FOMO. The second one is the gain or profit that you'll make. And the third one is a logical decision, in that order. So fear and loss drive people first. Gain and profit drive people second, and logic drives them third. So that's the order you want to have it in. The fear, so that's my fear with residual income. My gain is it means I can do a lot more shit I want to do. Like I travel a lot now. I was down south for the last 7 days. At the time of my life, I was mountain climbing at Bluff Knoll, absolutely wrecked myself. Had the, Josiah, my youngest son, couldn't walk for 3 days. I was like, but we had the best time climbing the highest mountain in WA, doing some hiking, getting out on the beach, doing cold water swimming, doing all the stuff that I love doing, which I was able to do. So that's my profit or gain. It means I can do stuff. I got my new car, my new 4-wheel drive. I got my new camper trailer coming. I'm signed up for a 4-wheel drive and extreme survival course. This is all stuff that residual income enables me to do. So that's that. And logically, it just makes sense that you want to have multiple streams of income in place so you're not trapped into kind of one job or one way of being and constantly vulnerable. So it's kind of mapping that out in your mind, because I'm telling you, if you get the psychology worked out and get this in your mental framework, you'll be astonished how quickly you start to generate residual income. Second is who you need on your team. So who's critical? So if you have a decent mentor, well, yeah, you're going to have challenges. I mean, people who accelerate always have coaches and mentors, someone who, a person or team of people who guide them to their next stage of evolution, people who've been there before, who've walked that road and who guide them. It's a bit like when I go on hiking trails. Occasionally I like to go on a hike which no one's done before, and I did that in Arizona. And I clawed my way and climbed a mountain, and I got to a place I couldn't pass, and I had to jump it, which was exhilarating, because if I missed, I would fall straight down to my death, and I did land properly. But to do so, I ended up hitting myself on a cactus. And for 3 weeks afterwards, I had all kinds of spikes and needles all through my leg, which wasn't fun. But nevertheless, it was exhilarating. I enjoyed it and things like that. But many of the time, I like to find out established hiking trails where people have gone before and things like that, and learn from the whys and things like that. So that's like my guide, my map, people who've been there before who can share with me, give me some tips. Like when I went to Bremer Bay, I was told go on a whaling tour and go with this company by someone I trusted, and I went and had the best experience, So the who speeds up your process, and the wise individual will always get people who've been there before. They'll invest money themselves to go to the next stage. And the way I explain it is like farmers are smart like this. Farmers, when they've had a really bad crop or harvest, know that's the most important time to be borrowing money if necessary to invest in a better crop. Otherwise, they're going to go broke. So by sitting back with fear of scarcity, not borrowing money, they will go broke for sure. Whereas if they can invest the money, go all out, borrow some extra money from someone if I have to, they will go to the next level. And I did that to get to my next level. I had to literally find money I didn't have to sign up for a mentoring program I couldn't pay for, because I knew if I didn't do that, I was stuck in being a lawyer for the rest of my life, or an accountant, which I just didn't want to do. So that, and I would, without exaggerating, I was spending $5,000 US a month for 2.5 years, and I made 4 trips to America to do with it. So I invested about 300,000 or 400,000, I worked out, and the best money I ever spent, So I knew good mentors. I also know good people in my team around me. Like I've got Connor, I work with cryptos, I've got James and Edwin in business, but it's kind of mapping out your team. If you've got a partner, they're an important part of your team, because you want your wife or husband or partner on board with you, or at least if they're not doing it with you, they're behind you, because that will be a drain on you. So that's the second thing about residual income. It's actually making sure you've got your team and people who are doing stuff around you. If I know, for example, I'm not an expert on cryptos. I know more than most, but I need people who are younger and better at it than me. And I've got people like that. I know I'm very good at anything to do with taxes, foundations, high-level planning, spiritual laws, and I'm particularly good, for example, on stuff like that. I'm very good at ways to grow business and create cash flow. I'm not quite so good, for example, on asset management and investing. So I have people around me who are constantly guiding me and I talk to, like mentoring and things like that. The third one is the what, or the how how do you basically do it, and what are the next steps. So like how do you do it? Like what ways are you going to do it, and things like that. So what are some of the things you can do? Like crypto can be one way. I'm a business venture, taking on some new project where you're serving people and things like that. Doing some consulting work online where you only work a small number of hours to get in some income while you're investing in other projects. It's breaking down those things. And then, so you almost brainstorm, you come up with actual practical ways you're going to do it. So what's the practical ways that you're going to do it? And like for my case, I've got three different businesses now. I've got a fourth one, which I'm getting ready with. I've got an investment syndicate, which I run as well, and various other little funds, which I get involved with in projects. So that's how I do it myself. And I'm continuing to get into other stuff all the time. And the fourth one is, what is the next step? So if you try and do everything, like for me, I knew my first step was when I had WealthSafe, was really making that business make consistent income month by month, and where by and large my time was limited in needing it. To do that, for example, I literally gave away half my company to Vina I work with. I literally did, but she did not buy in at all. The buy-in was done by me offering her to basically that as long as she stepped up and she ran it day to day, then I would give her half the company, which had a brilliant website, like #1 on Google of almost everything, and probably the #1 in Australia in terms of what it was doing. So it was a great deal for her, but I bought my time back. And that's one of the biggest things with residual income I'll mention. But I heard years ago in an investment seminar that changed my life, when the guy said the average person prefers to be basically having 100% of, say, a $2 million income, whereas he said a true investor in residual income would rather have 10% of a $10 million business. Because even though they're only making $1 million compared to 2 million, the time is way less for them to do it. So they're free up to get other ones and keep their time free. So the next step for me was WealthSafe. That freed me up to start the Global Wealth Club. That took off. That freed me up to start the Awakening Then. That's starting to take off. Then it enabled me also to put time into the Global Investment Syndicate, which is now starting to work quite nicely. And now that, the Awakening Within starting to move, and I've got a few things to get that moving over the next month or two. And once that's done, I can then do the next thing. But you see, everything is step by step and not trying to do too many things at once. So that's my biggest comments, and hopefully helps you on that. Follow that 4-step process meticulously if you want to bring your residual income to the next level, and actually write it out, map it out yourself. When we do the event in the end of April, which we know that some of you are coming to and signed up for it and paid to come, we'll be going through this a lot more depth and mapping this out to really help you actually create a very clear residual income plan. So for those who are booked in for that event, out of interest, who's coming for the event at the end of April? Anyone? Like, I know there's a few of you I can see already here. Okay, yep, Marco, Joan, and Tony, yep. Esther, yep, April event, yep. Sure, Esther, yeah, no, we'll get my team, will be putting in the link for you to come and attend the event. Oh, it's already in there. So, yep, the Plan B guide. And yeah, definitely want to come along. We're going to be teaching this as well as wealth protection, and there's going to be a specialist thing about this, because we really want to get people's income up at the Global Wealth Club, and see people getting it up and showing them the ways to do it, where you can learn from our mistakes and where we fucked up, because believe you me, we did. As a bit of a kind of thing to help you out, I want to teach you 8 universal laws on residual income, stuff which I apply and I was taught in all my mentoring by very advanced teachers who pretty much, when I paid $5,000 US a month for that mentor, the first thing he was doing with me was working on residual laws, on universal laws, and understanding the principles. So the first thing he said, you always want to be detached from whatever you're doing. And it doesn't mean you're not passionate about it. Like, I love the Global Wealth Club. Am I attached to it where I depend on it? No. I mean, I love it. If the Global Wealth Club tomorrow, we're going to shut it down, I'd be off for my next project. I'd see it as end. I'd do everything I could in my absolute power to keep it going with the team. But if for whatever reason my time came, it was time for me to leave, I'd leave. I'm okay about that. So I'm also unattached to money, because all money is, it's a tool for me to be able to do what I love doing. And the truth is, if someone came to me tomorrow and I was able to live comfortably, have an endless supply of food by farming friends. If I was literally had a car which was perpetual electric charging, which I could easily get people to service it for me, I probably wouldn't really care or give a crap about having a lot of money at all. So all money does, remember, is give you opportunity, opens doors, and it is but the nature of the medium of exchange in the world that we live in right now. But that's one thing I learned was the law of attachment or law of detachment. And every spiritual practice from the Hindus to the Buddhists to the Kriyas, to the Christian faith, to the Mormon, they all teach you about being detached from this kind of stuff. And the love and what I call attachment to money is the root of all evil. That's the root of all the shit going on in the world. It's the sole reason why, driven by blind greed, governments and pharmaceutical companies right now are compelling people into getting jabs, and they've lost all sense of reason, where they'll listen to no contrary data, anything, because all governments can see is their billion-dollar investments going down the drain, and all the pharmaceutical companies are wanting to do is grow their profits. So it really is true. The love or attachment to money can cause a lot of harm. Now, that doesn't mean you don't be passionate about money. But I remember hearing a great wealthy man once saying, when he was asked, what was your turning point in terms of your wealth? And he said, when I was sleeping on the park bench. And he basically said, I always knew I was rich even then. It was only a temporary state of loss. It was just a temporary situation. He said, I always knew I could make the money back. I just had to sleep on a park bench for a while until I worked out how. Now, that's a classic example of a spectacular mindset with someone not attached. He knew he could make the money back. He'd done it before. I know that the video game Rygar, because I'm a bit of a gamer myself, I can beat that game. I know if I put some time into it, I can beat it again. I've played it again recently, and I haven't been able to get through all 27 levels like I used to. But if I gave myself 2 weeks devoted to it, I'd be doing it. So having that kind of mastery of money and staying detached and always knowing that there's plenty. I've done many little challenges for myself. Like I put myself through boot camps. Like I was saying to someone the other day, I look back at my life and I love the life that I live now. I just think I've lived such a cool life. I'm so happy with it because I've tried lots of things. I've done all kinds of insane things that most of you have never heard about. Like you probably heard about, 10% of my life. I was saying I went through a period where I deliberately chose to live on minimal money with hardly anything to see what happened, to see if I would starve or if I would find a way through it. And if the universe really would provide for me. And every single time I was provided for, I had miracles. I had people ringing me up feeling led to just give me money, who never know, just they're in the shower and they got this message, give Warren and Grace some money. We had stuff like that happening. I remember like many, many times when just sitting back then, I remember when we had no money when one of our businesses collapsed. I remember sitting there thinking, well, I can make it back. I'm not going to start living like a pauper. And I just kept going to restaurants and living a normal life. And I thought it'll work itself out eventually, and it did. So when you're not attached to money, your fear of loss starts to become a lot more limited. I wouldn't say it disappears because you always have that fear when you're like, oh, shit, I don't really seem to have much coming in, which keep you moving, but that doesn't become something that paralyzes you. So I cannot emphasize enough to let go of that. And the best thing you can do when you're stressing the fuck out about money is go out and have some fun and do something which shows you actually don't care by your actions. Show the universe that you don't care. Like, go, great, okay, well, I'm going off for a day. I'm taking the wife and kids or husband. Let's just go out and have a coffee together. Let's go and buy something. Let's go down to the beach. Let's go down this place. Let's just go and hang out and have the time of our life and take the kids out and have the best time of our life. Do something where you don't think about it. And you'll watch with astonishment what will end up happening, how things will just seem to work themselves out. The other one too is purpose. Someone with purpose will always beat someone who doesn't have a purpose or reason for it. If you don't have a purpose behind money, universal law, and you're just doing it out of greed because you want to get it for the sake of it, even if you get the money, you will never really be happy. You will not. Money can make you happy if you've got a purpose. One of the great teachers on wealth, who I heard years ago, Peter Spann, in a wonderful seminar, he said, my observation is money is a good testing tool for the state of someone's heart. He says someone who's got purpose, reason, legacy, and dreams that are in their heart, money makes them a heck of a lot happier. He said somebody who actually feels unloved, feels stingy, feels closed in, who's unhappy, money makes their life a fuckload worse because now all they've done is magnify their fears. Now their fears have magnified. Now we've got the fear of looking after their money. Now they're afraid someone will target them. Now they're afraid that someone might only love them for their money. Now they're afraid, that of everything. Now they're afraid the governments could shut them down. So without purpose, all money will do is make your life a lot worse. So if you got purpose, lots of money will make your life miles better. Like for me, I just go, great, I can go and do shit now and have fun and all that kind of stuff. So getting a purpose and a reason, and it can be anything. Like literally, I love what John DeMartini once said. He said, the universe is not moral. It doesn't have a moral thing like, oh, that's a really selfish reason. If you've got a reason that actually drives you from your heart, and that's why many guys like Bill Gates, Bill Gates has an absolute passion and purpose to vaccinate and kill off as many people as he can because he believes in it, because he wants to reduce the population, to help the, climate change, all that. And he does it with love and drive in his heart. I want to just get these motherfuckers killed off and get us down to 1 billion. He'll make lots more money. And I think we're seeing that firsthand. It's crazy as it sounds. The universe is not moral. And that's something that a lot of people have a lot of trouble getting their mind around. And is the fact that the universe isn't actually moral. Like, for example, one guy who we heard about, a teenager, his reason that drove him further was when he realized that the more money he had, the more he could pick up girls and the more he would be able to attract girls because girls like money. That was what drove him, For someone else, it could be they want to provide an amazing life for their kids and their family. Someone else, they have a wife or husband they really love and they want to make them happy. Another one might be you want to leave a legacy for your aunt or your uncle who inspires you, or for your parents to set up an art school or a humanitarian center or whatever else. And it doesn't matter what it is. It's just knowing what you actually really do want to do and what drives you, It could be that you really want to pay for the best escorts going 10,000 a month. And that's one thing that drives you. And again, it sounds ridiculous, but it's what drives you in your heart and what your passion is that's actually behind you. And one of the reasons I'm convinced people have income problems is, as DeMartini says, a fixed mindset, and they create moral judgments around what they're doing rather than just doing what you actually really do want to do. I road rage because I like road raging. I just do. When I think someone's an idiot, I'll go off my tree at them, I'll yell at them, I'll absolutely lose my thing. I'll do everything I can to insult them. And then I go back laughing. And of course, my kids think it's funny and I love it. It's just fun. I like having a bit of a yell. I had someone today on the road. It was driving so slow in front of me, and I said, no, fuck this. And I just started beeping them. And they kind of quickly moved over to the side and they went past them. And of course, they just said, you're classic. And I'm saying, well, yeah, I just do it because it's fun, and I was just getting genuinely annoyed. So, and the funny thing is, as John DeMartini once said, he goes, the law of lesser pisses is the best way to get rich. And the law of lesser pisses says, you're better off to piss off other people than piss yourself off. And for me, when I express, it's out of my system. Now, that sounds completely crazy, but I'm sure you're getting the lesson what I'm saying here. I mean, I'm not saying go out and be like me. I mean, I'm a bit of a nut job, okay? Many of you are far more sane, more reasonable, more balanced people than me. But, you've all got your own reasons as to who you are, what you're about, and just express the purpose that drives you. And it could be, Esther's message. I know Esther loves helping kids, with the maths and the teaching, and came here for passion, that kind of thing. I'm keen to obviously talk to you more about that, Esther, which I've just been so busy. But, things like that. And where when you start doing what you love doing, it opens up more door. I can tell you now that most people I know who've come to the Global Wealth Club at some stage came to one of my common law webinars. And what you attracted to is absolutely pisses me off what the governments are doing. Like, I just think it's just absolutely outrageous. And I really did that webinar from passion last year because I was just so annoyed about it. I just wanted to help people with everything within me because it pissed me off. And I felt I want to do something. I mean, I'd love to go and just obliterate everyone, but I can't. So I can do that. So follow your purpose and reason. The law of service is so important, so important. This is where I think many go wrong, badly wrong, in fact. You've got to be serving in some way. And one of the challenges of many trading and crypto investing is if you're just simply doing it for what I call just purely making money for the sake of it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a big believer in investing and I do all of it myself. But again, there's got to be something behind it. And that's why I prefer to look at projects and go into stuff that by and large is genuinely giving back. That's my rule. I know that, for example, that Global Wealth Club, we're always big on giving lots back a lot because we know when we give a lot, we will get a lot. The more free webinars we do and the more we help people, people's hearts open to us, then they refer more friends and our business grows. So both parties win. When I give tax help to people to help minimize their taxes, and let's say someone pays me 50 grand and I reduce their taxes by 400 grand, that's a really great example of the law of service. I'm serving people and I'm giving them a result, so they're getting value from it. The more value you can give people, the more income you'll have. And I cannot emphasize it enough. If all you could do, for example, is save someone $2,000 tax, you could probably charge about $400, for example. If you're giving someone 50 grand value, that's all you can generally charge around that. If you're giving insane value, you can get more. That's why Google's rich. That's why Facebook's rich, because they give insane value to the world. Yeah, they've been a bit douchebag recently with their censorship, but Google give big time. Everyone here has used Google and got great value from them. And I know many of you hate me saying this, but many of you have had great values from Bill Gates. Bill Gates had a vision to put computers on everyone's desk. I use his Microsoft. Gates brought immense value to the world of his computer. He opened the world up for everyone. Facebook did the same thing. I've connected with friends, with people. I've met online, everything through Facebook. I mean, they've added huge, huge value to the world. Amazon as well. And not surprisingly, they're billion-dollar companies because they solve the world problem. If you solve a small problem for a few people, you'll make a small amount of money. If you solve a problem for a lot more people, you will make a lot more money. And just remember that and ponder how you can help more people. The law of fair exchange, that's very simple. You want to be giving, if you are taking more than you're giving back, you will feel guilty. If you're giving more than you're getting back, you will feel resentful. This is universal law. If in a relationship you're doing all the giving, you will feel pissed off and resentful. And some of you would be like, yeah. If you're doing too much taking from the partner, you will be feeling deep down very, very guilty, and you'll be trying to run away from those feelings. So in business, don't ever take advantage of people in that way. And taking advantage doesn't mean you make a lot of money. I have no trouble charging someone 100 grand if I can save $1 million tax through it. No problem. That's absolute fair exchange. Like, it's a great win-win deal. So it's not about the amount. It's making sure that what you're giving people reflects the value. I paid John DeMartini's $3,000 US for 1 hour of his time in November, and I was absolutely wrapped with what I got. I got so much shifting of my grief and that around Sammy's departure, I literally walked away virtually back to normal, and it solved almost a whole lot of stuff in record time that would have taken me weeks to solve. So that was great value for me, you know, absolutely great value. So giving and really doing that kind of stuff. And then for me, that's why I demand fair exchange back. I mean, I had a nitwit who emailed me today and was saying to me about, you know, giving me this long speech about their foundation they wanted to set up and look at all this kind of stuff, and we're giving back, and you're a man that wants to give to people and help people. So I'm asking you to donate all your time for free, set up the foundation. In exchange, I'll be nice to you and let you join my temple. And I just wrote back and said, well, thank you very much for your magnificent offer, but I will graciously decline. I suggest you go find a free community service and, you know, where uni students do work experience, and you may get that answer, you know, because that was a blatant example of someone trying to manipulate the law of fair exchange, you know, and it's a big law for prosperity that you give to people and then get that, and then there's an equality in the exchange. So this is one of the big, in relationships, in money, in business, in every single thing that you do. The law of wisdom, that's just financial wisdom, safety first, spreading your wish. Now, we've done plenty of teaching on that, so I won't go too much into it, but show wisdom as well. Like, you know, getting residual income does not mean you go put all your money in some 8% a month crypto that you found online. I mean, that's not wisdom. That's very dangerous. You're likely to lose your money and suffer a big loss. So, you know, spread your risk, do your due diligence, and basically make sure you know what you're doing. Multiplication and leverage, it's a hard concept for people to get when you've been at university and you work in an hourly rate. That's why I never do hourly rates. I occasionally have people ask me to do a hourly rate consult. I just don't. I prefer multiplication. So multiplication means, for example, exactly the analogy I gave you. If you have the choice between, $1 million income stream, but you're 100% responsible enough to do all the work, or you get 10% of say a $500,000 or $5 million business, you're only going to make 500 grand from it, but you've got your time, and then you can multiply that because you can keep growing that. You can keep growing that. You can bring on more staff. You can make it a $50 million business. Then you can be getting, $5 million. So leverage means you're looking at ways to where you can multiply it without having to work longer hours. And that's a challenge. If you don't know how to do it, then you need a mentor, plain and simple. That's what you need. I'm so big on mentoring. We still have one in our business. Every one of my businesses, I have a business mentor who we have a weekly thing, and we pay them a monthly fee to help us continue to grow and multiply and stay growing the companies. Because we know that the mentoring and the leverage is what's going to grow our income, and it works. We've even got a challenge to increase the leveraging. I've offered 10 grand. With two of our companies, we've got a bet on the table. I said the one that beats the other one next financial year, I'll personally give 10 grand to you, and then they've all put some money on the table, stuff like that to make it fun. But, ways that I know that will get me a good return because they'll be keen to increase their income, to share among the staff. Law of mentoring as well. I've talked a lot about that. But look, you never outgrow the need for a mentor, not unless you're sitting there with a $500 million or billion. And even then, Donald Trump, it's well known, has on his board different people who are, who think differently to him. In our global investment syndicate, James, for example, is by far the most conservative, and he's very valuable because he's the one who, when all of us are keen to go on something, will have hesitations, and they'll normally be pretty wise because he just is like, well, I want to protect capital. I want to protect anyone who's in this. I want all that kind of stuff. So mentoring means you've got people teaching you, and as you start to get to the point when you're better at it, you just want someone to keep you accountable at all times. And you've got to be thick-skinned, and not get easy butthurt or sensitive. Like we always laugh about, my stories of my mentor, the guy who took me through the roof. Some of the stuff he would say to me, the guy was paying $5 grand a month. I literally paid to get my ass kicked. And he taught me, and I still remember him saying one time to me when I mentioned, he goes, your income's dropped off a bit. And I said, well, yeah, because I'm consolidating the business. He goes, oh, okay, so you become a loser now. I said, no, I'm just consolidating. He goes, yeah, look, that's fine. He said, you can always make excuses for being a loser. Most people do. I'm just surprised you would do it. You didn't strike me as a loser. And of course, I just pissed myself laughing. And I said, okay. I said, point taken. And I said, well, I'm going to do this next. He goes, well, you're still sounding like a loser because that's what a loser would do the minimum effort. So I said, fine. So he sets me this insane target. And I'm like, great. And I achieved it in 3 weeks. It was a 4-week target. And, I never would have got that but for a mentor who would just goad me and get in my face and say stuff to me. And, he would even say things to me like, he said, you'll do better in business if you really basically being true to yourself as a man, not trying to be something you're not. And one time I was with him in Las Vegas and we're hanging out. I just started working with him. And he goes to me, do you work out? And I said, no. And he goes, yeah, I thought so. I said, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, well, your body's pretty pussy. So you look like a bit of a wimp. And I just go, huh? He goes, yeah. He goes, you probably have a lot of trouble right now attracting really good girls in your life. And he went through a series of things and everything he said was spot on. I just said, shit, okay. So what do you recommend? He goes, dude, he goes, grow up and work out. And he gave me this workout program. And literally, I just accelerated my life and my self-worth and everything. So good mentoring will kind of push you forward as well. And they'll do stuff to you. And like I said, you want a mentor that will challenge you. You don't want someone who will tell you that you're good and always encouraging you. Yes, you want someone who believes in you, someone who encourages you, someone who says who believes in you, but also someone who will give you a spank when you basically aren't doing what you need to do. And the law of the tithe. This is an ancient law which if you actually go and read almost everything like Cashflow and Ponder's Dynamic Book of Prosperity and various other books, there's something magic about the 10%. And the way I take this is it's twofold. So 10% of whatever comes in, you tithe to yourself with saving, but also as your profits, 10% you give beyond yourself to others in some way. Like you're giving into some kind of projects or programs or helping out or giving back and things like that. So tithing is a really powerful thing. Giving to a spiritual teacher who inspires you. You know, I do that myself. I regularly tithe to who I'm led to give to. Spiritual teachers I work with, I'll just send them a random amount. I'll randomly put some money into something and just give it to someone, and I won't make a big deal about it. I'll just do it. As well as always tithing to myself. So that's another really important. Give to yourself and make sure you keep reminding yourself there's an abundance and always give to someone. I love doing things like when I go shopping, sometimes there's a guy sitting there, you know, looking for money. And I don't normally give to people who beg for money, but occasionally I get this instinct for some reason to give to someone. And this particular guy, I just don't know, I get a sense to give to him. But when I go to him, I don't just give him coins, I give him a big note, you know, and of course he goes, oh, wow, you know. So doing things like that, but no one sees, but actually feel good when you do it. I don't know if you do that, but if you don't do it, just do that every now and again. You know, just do something where you just do a random act of kindness, give some money to someone just because you want to do something kind for someone who doesn't necessarily even deserve it, but somebody who you just get this heart connection to do it for this person. And you'll know what I mean as you start to trust your intuition. You know, I remember being in Vegas or in Nashville, Tennessee some years ago. And I walked past there was homeless and beggars everywhere. And I just didn't feel led with any of them. And next minute I saw this guy sitting there. And he was the only one who wasn't pushy. All the rest of them were sort of giving things out. He was lying there and he had 2 kids with his wife. And one of his kids was cuddled up to him. And he just was sitting there. And my heart really felt for him. And I just had this sense that my first thought was this guy really shouldn't have his kids out so late. It was 9, but obviously they need to eat. So I thought, I'm not going to give him a small amount. I'm going to make sure he can feed his kids. So I just walked up. I gave him a large note and I ran before he could look at me because I really didn't want, you know, any recognition. I did this for me because I wanted to do it. And I came back 15 minutes later and I was so happy to see he wasn't there because I knew he'd gone. That meant he was off to feed his kids. So things like that, it's about you giving back, but it benefits you as much as people because it keeps your heart open and reminds you there's plenty of abundance and there's people less fortunate than you. And that's a really good thing about residual income. If you're a giver and you do that from your heart because you want to, then you earn the right to receive, and then you've earned the right to absolutely savage socialism, which really by and large teaches people to get something for nothing. That's why I hate socialism, because socialism encourages an entitlement mentality of something for nothing and will lead people to poverty. Entitlement will lead, so socialism will lead people to poverty. And that's why I loathe it. It's a very evil government institution, and I don't like it one little bit for that reason. So you see it differently. That's the reason I don't like socialism, because it violates almost all these laws. So that's my summary of everything. So any questions, comments? Who's enjoyed it today? Who's got some real value? Maybe even give your greatest learning today an action step that you're going to do. Your greatest learning, greatest step from here. Aiden, plenty to chew on? Yeah. Yep, Esther, reminder of my need for fantastic mentors. Yep, Mel, absolutely. Thank you. Sit down and brainstorm again. Do my values, mentor for Peter and for Ben. Yep, that's great. Awesome. Connecting to purpose. Mindset, very important. Absolutely. And yeah, like I said, we're going to be covering this a lot more on our event at the end of the month, as well as wealth protection. So I'll get my team to put the link back in again for the event. Nadine, absolutely. Mentoring is important. Tam, just need to work out my next plan for residual incomes. I'm not going back to nursing. That's really great, Tam. It's good to make that decision and just say, I'm not doing this. And that tends to open the door when you make a clear, decisive decision. Esther asks, at Plan B, will there be an opportunity for personal questions? There will be plenty of opportunity. absolutely, Esther. Plenty of opportunity for questions. Donna is sitting down to consider my team. Yep. So go through those 4 steps: the why, the who, the how to do it, like the various things, what you can do, and then the step you got to take next. So Graham, great value to mentors important. Thanks so much. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, mentors critical. And Darren, relook at investment plan. Yeah, absolutely. But take those lessons to heart, everyone. You become givers, and that way you will watch how your incomes will increase. You will start to get a more creative mind and a more thinking and things like that. So, yeah, no, great. Look, thanks, everyone. I really appreciate everyone's attention today. And Joan and Tony, great info. 4 steps going to mentor. Yep, thank you, Sophie. So who here now is definitely coming to the event after today? Who wasn't coming before and plans to, and is going to be coming now? Just let me know, just so I can see. Esther, are there any in-person trainings coming up? The good news is yes, Esther. In June, we're going to be doing a very unique sovereignty event where Stephen Pettit will be flying in, and also Virgil from Singapore. It's going to be an absolute ripper. So we'll be announcing the in-person event relatively soon. That's going to be in June. It's going to be a smaller, limited number, though. So who's coming to the event in the end of the month? So, yep, now, Jessica, awesome. Mel, yes, the event will be recorded. So if you sign up, you'll get access to the recordings. Esther, that's great. So, yes. So, yep, just to do it. Also, anyone in Perth, actually, like Esther, just so you know, if we get enough people, we are going to also have a small in-person for people in Perth who want to come along, basically to a little place. So we get about 10 people who could actually come in person. So we'll be doing it online. Jessica, yeah. So some of you in Perth, we're going to keep the numbers down to about 10 to 12. But yeah, because we're going to be probably doing it at a house somewhere, making it quite relaxed, and then doing the whole thing online. But yeah, so for those who want to do it, just reach out to us. So for those in April who are actually in Perth, feel free to email us at the support at Global Wealth Club and sign up for the event, and then just email us, and then we can see if there's enough numbers or get a bit of an idea. So Joan and Tony will be in WA for June event. That's awesome. So thank you, everyone. And I look forward to seeing all of you next time. Bye for now.